Good morning, everybody. Our monthly praise and worship songs are There Is Room for All, number 76, and Perpetual Praise, number 1, both from the Sing Book. You can find them under your seat. Grab a rhythm instrument, and let's get to praising. Stand, if you would, in body or in heart.
And I rejoice and sing, my refuge and my rock in whom I trust. There's room for all. There's room for all. There's room for all in the shadow of God's wing. There's room for all, sheltered in God's love. And I rejoice and sing, my refuge and my rock in whom I trust. There's room for all. There's room for all. Yes, there is. There's room for all, sheltered in God's love. And I rejoice and sing, my refuge and my rock in whom I trust. There's room for all. There's room for all. Are new each morning, and with each dawning we sing your praise. From early morning to restful evening, our grateful hearts sing praises. Your love and mercy shining bright, bring hope and joy as we follow in your light. You breathe within us, you sing within us, you move our hearts to perpetual praise. Through all of our days, perpetual praise. One more time. Your many blessings you knew each morning, and with each dawning we sing your praise. From early morning to restful evening, our grateful hearts sing praises. Your love and mercy shining bright, bring hope and joy as we follow in your within us, you sing within us, you move our hearts to perpetual praise. Through all of our days, perpetual praise.
You may be seated. So, good morning, and welcome to all of you who are here in the building. To those of you who are watching online, we're glad that we are all participating in this service together. Our theme is progressive theology that we have been going through, and you can find today's bulletin for the service either on the website or on the app if you'd like to follow along there. We're excited that we're going to start new member classes August 7th and August 14th. We hope that you want to join. and that you can come to these classes. And if you can't come to one or even both of them, let me know. I guess I can do some private tutoring if you're interested. And we're also going to have a Zoom option. So those of you online, you're like, oh, but I want to join too. Because you do, right? You can come to these classes and you can become a member of Plymouth as well. One thing that we have been trying to restart again is our fellowship ministry. The after service where we have some little snacks and something refreshing to drink and refreshing time of conversation. If you're interested in participating in fellowship, let me know. Also, if there is something that you say, boy, if you only had artichokes at fellowship, I'd be there. What is it that you're looking for that would just tickle your fancy? If it's not too extreme, let me know, because we want to have stuff that people are drawn to, and honestly, we want to draw you there. So let us know. I don't know if artichokes are your thing, but if they are, maybe I can come over to your house for dinner sometime, because that sounds delicious. Anyway. Don't forget to send in your prayer flags when it's not scorching hot outside. I'll start sewing them back on the ribbons. I haven't been able to do that for the last couple of weeks, but we're interested in your blessings on those flags. And now, my friends, let us bring ourselves fully to this time and to this place. I don't know about you, but at least for the last few weeks, being spiritual has been hard. The January 6th trials, stuff that's happening with the Supreme Court, the local states doing the things that they're doing, and all that comes with the communication on all the social medias and with each other has been a weight. I believe that church has a lot of functions in our lives. One of them is to affirm that our spirituality belongs in places like this, and that our faith does inspire us to speak up, to speak out, to speak with, to stand with, to be in solidarity with. So I'd like us to take a deep breath, because the other thing I think is important about the function of church is that it offers us a respite from all of the pain and the anxiety and confusion of day-to-day life. So the hope is that there's this sweet spot of Sabbath for every aspect of our being, as well as inspiration and affirmation and even challenge for the work to be done. As you sit here, wherever you are, whether you're in this building or you're online, and you're taking stock of how this past week has affected you, I encourage you to consider your physical self and where you might be trembly, where you might be relaxed, how all of those things are at play within you, and know that this is a place where you can find that respite. This is meant to be a space that we create together, to come together in wholeness, to acknowledge the wibbly wobbliness of our bodies in response to life, and to soothe those tremors, not to deny them, but to say, here we can relax. The same is true emotionally, where we get filled with fire in so many different ways, some fantastic ways, and sometimes we get set ablaze where we kind of weren't intentionally meaning to be. And that blaze can be the inspiration and the encouragement we need in our lives. It can also be like our latest heat wave, just a little bit too much. And I don't know where you are emotionally, but you get to do whatever is respite for your emotional self here right now. Find your own need. There's a lot of thinking going on too. A lot of thoughts about what's right and what's wrong and who should be saying what and how it should all be done and strategizing. And there's just so much thinking that we need to be doing right now, and I invite you to rest. To take a moment to be in this space and to say, I don't have to fix anything right now. I can just be. I can be in the presence of love and think about what's hopeful, what's true, what's generous, what's good, what's kind, what's loving, and find respite for my brain. Take a rest from the strategies. And although I said it has been hard to be spiritual, even with that, our spirits are always running. Our spirits are always engaged, whether we have it in our kind of the forefront of our experience or it's kind of undercurrent. So breathe into your spirit. Be aware that your spirit has also been carrying a load, a weight, and try to know that your spirit can escape that weight for the sake of healing and respite. Know that all of the aspects of who you are deserve kindness and deserve rest, deserve to experience God's love, and deserve the connection that happens in a community like ours, where we gather together to do something bigger than ourselves, where we join spirit to spirit across the miles. Here in this place, people have come from across miles, and people join with us from across the miles. So breathe deep the sweetness, this wonderfully refreshing drink that is sanctuary, as we bring ourselves fully to this time and to this place.
Please join me in our responsive call to worship. With our eyes and our spirits, we seek you, Lord God. With our hearts, we reach out. To feel your love and life. In joy or sorrow, with faith we offer our praise. Let us sing together, I Sing the Mighty Power of God, number 12 from the New Century Hymnal, which you can find under your seats. Please rise as you are able in body or in heart.
I sing the mighty power of God that made the mountains rise, that spread the flowing seas abroad and built the lofty skies. I sing the wisdom that ordained the sun to rule the day. The moon shines full at God's command, and all the stars obey. is your glory known. The clouds arise and spread their showers. My oar took from your throne. All life is but a gift from you, and ever in your care. Whenever people gather, you, oh God, are present there.
Our first biblical witness today is from the book of Ruth, chapter 1, verses 15 through 19a. So Naomi said to Ruth, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. May God do thus and so to me, and more as well, if even death parts me from you." When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem.
So our second biblical witness is from 2 Samuel chapter 1, 25 through 27, a really short piece. It says, "How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan lies slain upon your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished." And then a third bonus biblical witness from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, 21 through 26 says, Jesus was troubled in spirit and declared very truly, "I tell you, one of you will betray me." The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he was speaking. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter, therefore, motioned him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So, while reclining next to Jesus, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread when I've dipped it in the dish." All three of these biblical witnesses are about relationships. Very close relationships. What was going on in them, do you suppose? If these stories weren't in a book that we call the Bible, would you imagine these stories differently? Because they're in the Bible, how does that shape your imagination of who these people were to each other? Simply because it's in that book. And as always, as a caveat, there's no perfect answer to these questions. Not only were these stories written between 2 and 3 millennia ago, additionally, they were never meant to be taken as historically accurate. They're moral stories. They're historical events within them, but the tellings have been embellished for the purpose of the writer and for the storytelling. They all have far more than one way of being understood. And that's true then, and it's true now. So Ruth and Naomi, we know that they were mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. It's been suggested by some doing queer theology that they might have become more like partners. But we aren't to know. I mean, is it possible? Sure. What's more important to me is that they were close. Ruth was not going to let Naomi go back to her homeland alone, with all of Naomi's losses, being vulnerable and alone, which for a widow at that time had serious implications. Ruth was going to stay by her side, support her, and love her. But why? Why would she make that choice to leave her homeland when she had the chance to go back to her mother's house? I don't know. Maybe her mother's house wasn't all that. Maybe she found more companionship with her mother-in-law than she did in her mother's house. Maybe that's not the case at all. Maybe the relationship she had with her own mother was wonderful, and she was like, Naomi's got nothing, but I've got siblings that can take care of my mother. I'm going to stay with Naomi. We don't know. We don't have any background information that they've given us on that. All we know is Ruth said, by golly, I'm going with you. Try to stop me. The love must have been reciprocal between the two. Over the years, they must have developed a bond, possibly through their shared losses. Naomi and her husband, along with their 2 sons, left their homeland because of a famine, and they moved to Moab. Not long after they moved, the story tells us, Naomi's husband died. Still, she and her 2 sons were settled there, so they carried on with life. The sons each married Moabite women. And the story says, when they had lived there about 10 years, both of her sons, Mahlon and Chilion, also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. They had shared losses. Of course, there was a bonding that happened. Naomi decided to return to her homeland, Bethlehem in Judah. She told both of her sons' widows to go back home to their mothers. And one of them did return, and Ruth stayed. And her devotion to her mother-in-law has been talked about ever since. Her words of commitment are used in wedding ceremonies because that's the kind of devotion that we equate with this story. Complete and undeniable heart-to-heart love. Were they partners? How do you define partner? If you have an expansive definition of the word partner, I would say absolutely they were. They were partners in life. They went through their life together. They were intermingled. They had each other's backs. We see their constant commitment throughout the whole story to each other. There are just lots of ways to partner with people in life. And any assumptions that we make about what that means is pure speculation. The depth of their commitment to each other is clear. And that beauty alone is enough for me. From 2 Samuel, we read a very short portion of a story about Jonathan and his father Saul being dead. The excerpt was from a really long poem, or maybe it's a song that David wrote, extolling the virtues of Saul and Jonathan and David's grief over both of their deaths. In other places in the story about Jonathan and David, we know that they were extremely close. Earlier in the story, we read that Jonathan loved David as his own soul. A little later, the story says, then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that he was wearing, gave it to David, his armor, even his sword, his bow, and his belt. I mean, these aren't just kind of incidental items. At that time, giving those meant commitment. It meant something deep. And then later, still in the story, there's a time when Saul is angry with David and he wants to murder him. David hid and waited for a coded message from Jonathan. After he received it, it was bad news because it was true. Saul wanted him dead. Jonathan and his, Saul's son was just beside himself because of this. But David rose from his hiding place behind the stone heap toward Jonathan. The Bible says that he prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept with each other. And it says, David wept the more. Then Jonathan said to David, go in peace. Since both of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord shall be between you and me, between my descendants and your descendants forever. And David got up and left, and Jonathan went to the city. Who were these men to each other? Were they lovers? From their story, it certainly seems possible, even likely to me. The way that we've constructed love and intimacy hasn't been constant over the years, or even over the miles of our global existence. There's a wonderful story that Bishop Yvette Flunder tells when she was she was visiting the country of Africa, and she was in a specific tribe, and she was talking to the women there, and Bishop Flunder's a lesbian, and so she was trying to know if there were gay people, if that's how they thought of their society, and she was trying to get to know them. So she asked a question to the women, and how she received the answer was very different than what she expected. She must have asked something about, if there were gay women, if women had sex together or something like that. And the woman she was talking to said, no, women have sex with men to make children. We make love to women. A light bulb went off in her head because she realized she was asking the wrong question. And she was anticipating and making assumptions based on her culture and what was normal to her as to what would be normal to others. They didn't have the same structure to their relationships that we do. And to be clear, ours isn't the right way and theirs the wrong way, and theirs isn't the right way and ours the wrong way. They're just different ways. And that was likely true of Jonathan and David. Their devotion to one another is clear. Their intimacy is described for us throughout the story. I get incredibly frustrated, angry even, when people make broad statements of judgment against types of relationships that aren't like theirs. Whether it's cisgender straight people railing on about how bad queer love is and identity differences are, or it's monogamous people sitting in judgment about polyamorous relationships. Sometimes it has been a judgment about two siblings who have grown so close that they're basically each other's partners because they've gone through life together. I knew two sisters many years ago. They never had romantic relationships in their life. They might have thought, they wanted to and dabbled a little bit, but they found them very unfulfilling. It was their connection to each other that they found the most fulfilling. And they went on vacations together. They lived together all their life in the same house that they were raised in. They stayed with their mother until she died. It was a beautiful relationship. And they said, we're basically each other's life partners. It's fantastic. They knew what gave them wholeness. How dare anybody judge them for that? Maybe sometimes we might judge multi-generational families who do everything together. Don't you want your own little family? Do you really need everybody? We like everybody. Why wouldn't we? Different. To be a part of the life of one in that kind of instance, you get the whole package. For some reason, when people live their lives in a way that has different kinds of intimacies, it can feel threatening to those who are absolutely certain that there's only one way to identify or to have relationships that are moral, ethical, and godly. So the third Bible story that we read was from the 13th chapter of the Gospel of John. Jesus and his disciples, who were with his friends, who were his friends, they're all sitting down at this table. And I doubt that it's the one that's pictured, the long table with everybody on one side for the photo op, right? Imagine maybe a more round table. Maybe there are a couple small tables. Who knows what the configuration was? It was the night that he was about to be betrayed. In the Gospel of John, there is no Last Supper ritual enacted. I think by the time that John wrote that gospel, the other ones had been out for so long. And it's like, the reading says they had supper. It's like, okay, go read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and you'll know what that supper was all about. They had supper. But it's afterwards that the story really picks up. Jesus washes everyone's feet. After that, they return to the table, and Jesus explains what he just did. Then he makes his remarkable and stunning declaration that someone whose feet he just washed, with whom he already had supper, is going to betray him. Peter whispers to the man that the story calls the one that Jesus loved and asks, find out who the betrayer is. I think that we can read what we want to in this phrase. The man who Jesus loved. I don't think Jesus would be offended if we decided he and this man were partners, or that they weren't. What we learn here is that there was a special bond between Jesus and this other man. Who are we to decide what they shared? So here's how I imagine the story. After Jesus' declaration that someone around the table would betray him, I think everybody started defending themselves. Maybe asking others, would you dare betray Jesus? What are you up to? It's not me. It's absolutely not me. I think that there was a hubbub around the table, that voices started to rise. There was a little bit of chaos, and that gave Peter the opportunity to sidle up to this man whom Jesus loved and said, could you just find out who it really is? And the man was like, yeah, okay. Voices were overlapping at the table. Because of the intimacy between this man and Jesus, it didn't take too many words for Jesus to understand his question. And Jesus confides in him by whispering, I'll give a piece of bread to the person. Watch who I give it to. Simon Peter knew exactly who to talk to. Simon Peter knew who Jesus was closest to. And if there was something personal that needed to be found out, it was this guy who was going to find out. There's a book by Ted Jennings called The Man Who Jesus Loved. Maybe we should read it in a book study. He makes the argument that they were indeed partners, romantic, intimate partners. He explains why that's a really cool thing. I don't know what kind of partnerships that Ruth and Naomi or David and Jonathan or Jesus and this man he loved had. But what I do know is that they had an intimacy that was profound and deep and beautiful. How many wonderful kinds of intimacy are there? They're all holy and sacred when they're experienced and shared with an open heart. We do ourselves and others a disservice when we try to define others by structures we've decided are normative. That's what's happening politically and socially right now, with all the dissension that we're experiencing. Some people are watching others' intimacy and deciding if it's moral and holy. They're looking around. Who are they? Who are they to each other? What's happening there? What's going on in that house? What's going on over there? I need to judge them. I must judge, because I'm only satisfied if I do that. I see it on Facebook all the time. It's making me really angry. It's none of anybody's business. The judgment about abortion being based on conservative Christian notion that personhood begins at conception is not based on a balanced biblical understanding of the subject. I think it's very fair to say that if your religion requires you to not have an abortion, you shouldn't have one. But you can't legislate others according to your religious beliefs. That's the whole point of the separation of church and state. The same is true about same-gender loving relationships or gender nonconforming identities. So for me, one helpful way to read the Bible in order to let go of some of these things in order to let go of the certain prejudice that we have about what the Bible is supposed to be saying, is to read the stories as if they weren't in this collection that we call the Bible. If someone is known to me as a man that another man loves, what kind of relationship do I think they have? David said that the love he had for Jonathan surpassed the love that he had for women. What should I make of that if it's not in the Bible? I named my reflection, were they or weren't they, because that's so often the question. This is true of gender as well. Are you a man or are you a woman? Oh, I've gotten that question a lot. You're not either? Well, I need you to be one or the other so I know how to talk to you. Really? What kind of malarkey is that? You don't know how to talk to me? I'm a human. Talk to me like I'm a human. Why does gender just determine the scope of your conversation? So the name of my sermon is rhetorical. It's a rhetorical question. I ask it because we're used to asking it. We're used to wondering and trying to figure things out. When I say we, I'm not necessarily talking about us. We've had these conversations over and over and over again. I'm thinking about all the people who are feeling threatened because their structures of identity, expression, love, family, and relationships are not as centered in society as they used to be. People are going to be greatly harmed and even die because of this wave of conservatism that's crashing down on us, defining when life begins or what makes a family or a person moral or legitimate. This is why Plymouth and faith communities like ours is so important. Every time we lift up our voices or take actions as people of progressive faith, we lift up the people who are being knocked down, and we lift each other up when we get knocked down. We have the power to question the conservative religious base from a faith-based perspective that counters our own. We use the same sacred writings. We read them different. We teach them different. We tell the stories different. We use them as a springboard rather than a rule book. We recognize that what was written then was for their time. There are core values we can ascribe to, but the specifics must be interpreted with the new information that we have, that they didn't. This isn't being of the world, as some would suggest. It's just taking stories into context to what we've learned about what it means to be human and what it means to be together. We have a job and a calling to counter this wave of conservatism with the wind of spirit, speaking truth to power. We have to deflect those superficial questions like were they or weren't they, with more substantial questions. Like if they were, what makes you so afraid? Or why do you feel entitled to judge another's life? There will always be people in leadership, whether it's our country, the church, corporations, local councils, who want to be in control because they like power for power's sake, rather than wanting to do good. Right now, it seems like we're kind of saturated with that leadership. We need to keep asking the more substantial questions about what's going on. As our voice grows louder, others who don't know they had a people like us will be inspired to raise their voices as well because they'll be in community. I believe God is grieved at how people are being treated, and I believe God is grieved at the way we're fighting with each other. This is why I think we need to deflect the superficial questions and try to get to the core questions that's in the middle of it all. Honestly, at times like this, I wish I believed in God as a great puppet master that would just set everything to right. But instead, it's up to us to use our understanding of holy love to return dignity and integrity to people who are being violated and minimized because of who others think they are or what they do, what it means for people to be partners in life, to love one another, to make choices for their families. This is what our faith leads us to do. In the middle of the respite that I want Sunday service to be, this is also our challenge to say, yes, we need to stand up. Yes, we need to speak up. We need to be in solidarity. And we need to do it in a way, I think, that brings us all a little closer together instead of being willing to fight for the purpose of finding out just how different we are. Because I believe no matter who you are, no matter where you are in life's journey, however you name yourself, however you have loves, even if it confuses others, you deserve respect and dignity. You deserve to be celebrated, comforted, and loved. You deserve the kind of intimacy that makes you feel whole. And with that, my friends, peace.
In this sacred place of worship, we gather once again to renew our faith and praise the God we love. So to share His grace with others, we welcome all who by these doors, and we pledge today as one. Open hearts, open doors. All are welcome here to seek and
Please join your hearts in prayer with mine. Holy Love, I implore you to make your presence known with mercy, grace, and kindness in all places and with all people. I beg you that you make yourself present in places of power with the fruit of your Holy Spirit. And as we address the systems that create the kinds of problems that we are working so hard against, help us to find our own selves bearing that same fruit: generosity and kindness and self-control and hope and love, graciousness, mercy, all the ways that your Holy Spirit produces fruit. May it start to happen in unlikely places for the purpose of repairing the damage. You've said in other places that you would give beauty for ashes and the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. I implore you, Holy Love, to keep that promise within us, from us, and where we enter into rooms and where others do important work. May that be the tone so that we can shift things, not only people between person and person, but on the larger scale as well. And I also lift up the fact that in the midst of all of this hubbub, there are people getting really sick in lots of ways. Physically, there are people struggling with all kinds of illness, and COVID is running rampant. And we ask that you would help us to be helpers to each other and to find ways to see each other in the midst of that and to not get so overwhelmed with life that we lose those kinds of day-to-day loving structures that help to lift us up and make us strong, whether we're floundering physically or emotionally, mentally or spiritually. Lift us up, put us back together, help us to be the people that we strive to be according to the teachings of Jesus, according to the Christ who walked the earth and said, "Follow me." Help us to be that people together, always offering hope and a kind word in the midst of the batteredness and the chaos that we know is going on. And because that we want to do this as community, we have given ourselves, committed ourselves to the work of ministry together. Let us lift up our voice in these words of prayer, saying, "We are holy and beloved by God. Because of this, we clothe ourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. We bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, we forgive each other, just as forgiveness and grace have been given to us. Above all, we clothe ourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. We let holy peace rule in our hearts, to which we are called in this one community of Christ's body. As thankful people, we share our lives with one another, sing praises and pray. May the hopes in our hearts and the work we do in ministry add to the love in the world. Blessed be.
Each week, we collect 2 offerings. One is for the church, which goes into our general fund for the running of the church and our ministries. The second is the loose offering, which is sent to a designated charity, which changes each week. If you brought your offering in person today, you're welcome to drop it in the offering box in the back. It's the glass church near the doors to the narthex. Our loose offering today will go to Interfaith Worker Justice, which is a national network that builds collective power by advancing the rights of workers through unions, work centers, and other expressions of labor movement, and by engaging diverse faith communities and allies in joint action, from grassroots organizing to shaping policy at the local, state, and national levels. If you would like to give to our general fund, to the loose offering, or to both, you can use bill pay from your bank, send us a check, use the Plymouth app, or use push pay according to the directions on your screen. As always, thank you for supporting Plymouth in the ministries of the loose offering.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise God, all creatures here below. Praise God for all that love has done. Creator, Christ, and Spirit one. Amen.
Please join me in our responsive offertory prayer based on the letter of James. Every generous act of giving comes from love. There is a religion that is pure and undefiled before God. Jesus taught, healed, and fed the crowds. Together, we seek to do the same. Let us sing together Peace, number 193 from the Sing Book, which you can find under your seats.
Peace be to you in all you do. Peace be the way in all you say. Peace be the light that shines so bright from your heart on the world this day. Peace, 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 peace. Peace be to you in all you do. Peace, 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 peace. Peace be to you in all you do. Peace be the song that we will sing. Peace be the joy our spirits ring. Peace be the love that sets us free. Free from all. Peace for you and me. Peace
Marshall, it's good to have you back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's good to sing with you all.
Kevin did a great job. We thoroughly enjoyed his company and his musicianship, but there's just something about the way that you are here with us that is joy, I think, and I want to say it's good to have you home. And so now, my friends, before I benedict, before I give the last word, Melanie, we gathered enough money for Melanie's gift to send her a basket that's going to take them a very long time to eat and drink through. And I made sure that there was at least a couple bottles of wine in the basket. So that there's a charcuterie board. I think I said that right. And so she sent me an email. I saw it this morning. I'm going to copy and paste it into Thursday's Thoughts with a picture of the basket. But she says that she misses us, that she appreciates us, that things are going well. And like I said, I'll copy and paste it. Please look at Thursday's Thoughts. If you don't get Thursday's Thoughts, let me know and I'll sign you up. So I wanted to let you know that she sends her greetings and all of that good stuff. So now, my friends, it is time to go from this moment to whatever it is you have next. Maybe what you have next is joining us for fellowship. We've got a few little snacky poos over there, not a charcuterie board, but, a few little snacky poos. But whatever it is that you have next going on, may you be blessed with it. May you find the peace of God that passes understanding, the peace of God that just doesn't make sense. In the middle of whatever chaos you're going through, may you say, I feel strangely peaceful. May that be what you experience, and may that be what you're able to give to others. May you find yourself being filled by a fountain of love that overflows, and may you get a sense of the connectedness that we all have on this journey together, so that you feel strong and bright and hopeful and comfortable and inspired and all of those good, wonderful things. And so, my friends, go forth from this place in peace and as peacemakers.
Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. God, empower me to be a witness for you, acting boldly in your name, seeking justice where there is hurting, offering hope where there is pain. Lord, prepare me, be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Take it away, Pastor Matt. Okay. Give me a real drum solo.